It's 2:20 p.m. on the 5th of November 2025. The Caribbean Sea looks calm from the sky, but 70 miles north of Venezuela, chaos explodes without warning. On board the Coast Guard cutter USCGC Stone, alarm scream. A 76mm shell rips across the stern, blowing a hole through steel and spraying seawater over the deck. 47 American sailors race to stations, smoke choking the passageways. Through the haze, the captain keeps his voice steady over the radio. "We are in international waters. We will not withdraw." 3 Venezuelan patrol ships close in, their guns locked, crews shouting commands in Spanish. One false move and the cutter could vanish beneath the waves. The Stone answers with its small 57mm cannon. Sharp bursts echo through the ocean air. The shells splash short, too light to matter. And then a calm voice breaks through on a secure channel. Gravely copies distress, flank speed. The destroyer is coming, but still far away. The cutter stands alone, surrounded, one hit away from disaster. The next minute will decide who lives to tell this story. This battle didn't begin from pride or politics. It started with money, dirty money. For 72 hours before the attack, USCGC Stone hunted drug runners through Caribbean waters, intercepting 3 go-fast boats and seizing 2,400 kilograms of cocaine, worth nearly $84 million on the street. That shipment wasn't random. It belonged to cartels tied to the Venezuelan regime. When that money disappeared, outrage followed. Venezuela called its move a defense of sovereignty. But radar and satellite data told another story. The Stone was 67 miles off the coast, far beyond any territorial limit. That's international water-free lanes for global trade, protected by law. If one nation can drive an American cutter from that zone, it's not just a challenge, it's a rewrite of the rules that keep the ocean open. For the 47 sailors aboard, this wasn't a political standoff. It was survival. The cutter carried a 57mm gun, several 50 caliber machine guns, and a flight deck enough for chasing smugglers, not fighting warships with 76mm cannons. Still, retreat wasn't an option. The Coast Guard's creed is simple: protect life, defend the mission, never back down when fired upon. At 4th Fleet Command, the stakes were clear. If Stone was captured or sunk, it would signal weakness to every rival watching. But if it survived, if help arrived in time, the world would see the opposite. It would prove that any attack on a US vessel, no matter how small, brings an answer measured in minutes. From Havana to Washington, radars tracked the flashing red distress call. The question wasn't who fired first anymore, it was who would still be floating when it ended. If you think the Coast Guard was right to stand its ground, press 1. If you believe the fight should have been avoided, press 9 and subscribe so you never miss what really happens when diplomacy fails at sea. Part 3. First response to 2600 characters. At 2:03 p.m., radar aboard USCGC Stone lit up 3 targets closing fast from the south at 28 knots. "Contacts verified," said the ops officer. The captain didn't hesitate. "Sound general quarters." Sirens wailed. Boots slammed on steel. Hatches locked. A message went out. "This is United States Coast Guard Cutter Stone, operating in international waters. Identify yourselves and maintain safe distance." The reply came seconds later, cold, accented. "Depart immediately or face consequences." The captain exhaled. "That's a threat." 2:14 p.m. The first Venezuelan patrol ship broke through haze, gun turret fixed on target. At 3,200 yards, 3 shells ripped the sea, exploding 400 yards ahead. "They're not bluffing." "No," the captain answered. "They're not." 2:17 p.m. Returned fire. Stone's 57mm gun thundered. Tracer rounds flashed, splashing near the enemy hull. Sparks, smoke, then silence. The rounds were too light to pierce armor. 2:19 p.m. 2 more ships moved in one port, one starboard. "We're boxed in." "Maintain bearing," the captain ordered. "We hold position." The radio hissed again. "You are violating Venezuelan waters. Surrender now." "Negative," came the reply. We will not withdraw. 2:21 p.m. A direct hit. The shell smashed into the stern, shredding antennas, setting fire. Fire in aft section. 3 sailors went down, burns and shrapnel wounds. Damage control teams moved fast hoses, stretchers, smoke everywhere. The cutter was hurt but alive. Send priority message to 4th Fleet under attack. The signal reached USS Gravely, 112 miles northeast. Her captain answered instantly. All ahead flank, set course to intercept. The destroyer surged through whitecaps at 32 knots. On stone, new blasts shook the hull. Windows shattered, the galley burned, the port side flooded. Stabilize her, yelled the chief engineer. Pumps roared. Range 2,000 yards, radar called out. The captain's voice stayed calm. Then we fight until they stop or we sink. 3 warships circled 1 wounded cutter. The ocean boiled with smoke and spray, and beyond the horizon, a destroyer was racing in missiles armed. Crew silent, orders clear, no warning shots. If you were there, would you fight or fall back? Type 1 to stand with the crew, or 9 to retreat before the next hit. 2:31 p.m. Far to the northeast, the USS Gravely charged through rolling seas at 32 knots. 9,000 tons of American firepower closing fast. Inside the Combat Information Center, green radar echoes pulse 3 Venezuelan patrol ships, circling 1 friendly contact. Range, 66 miles, the weapons officer called out. Harpoon missile range confirmed. The captain nodded once. Weapons free. On USCGC Stone, the deck shook under each blast. Fires burned through the galley and the stern. Damage control fought the flames with hoses and willpower. We've still got propulsion, the engineer shouted. Keep her steady. Smoke filled every passageway. The crew refused to give up. The Venezuelan ships pressed closer, preparing to board. Their commanders expected surrender. They didn't know salvation was already inbound. 2:32 p.m. On Gravely's deck, launch hatches opened. 4 Harpoon missiles burst from their tubes, leaving white trails that slashed across the sky. Each missile dropped to 15 feet above the waves, racing at 537 miles per hour toward their targets. Sea skimming, silent, deadly. At 2:38 p.m., lookouts on the Venezuelan flagship Guamachuto finally spotted them tiny shapes over the horizon. Incoming missiles was the last call heard before impact. The first Harpoon struck amidships, exploding with 488 pounds of high explosive. The ship split apart within seconds. The second missile slammed into the bridge, erasing command in an instant. 90 seconds later, Guamachuto vanished beneath the waves. The second vessel turned to flee but had no time. The third Harpoon struck broadside, lifting it off the surface before it shattered. The fourth hit seconds later, sealing its fate. 4 minutes later, all that remained was burning oil and scattered debris. The last Venezuelan ship froze. Its captain ordered, "Cease fire! Engines off! White flag up!" Gravely's crew redirected the final 2 Harpoons to detonate harmlessly beyond the target. Message sent. On Stone, the guns fell silent. The horizon filled with smoke and drifting wreckage. 2 enemy ships gone, 1 surrendering. 18 minutes from the first hostile shot to silence. If you think bravery and discipline turned the tide that day, press 1. If you believe no victory at sea comes without loss, press 9 and subscribe to see what followed after the smoke cleared. The real twist wasn't the missiles, it was the lie that started the fight. Venezuelan crews had been told the American cutter was alone, that no warship would risk conflict over a small patrol. Their intelligence was wrong. 4th Fleet had destroyers rotating within sprint distance, always listening, always ready. The moment Stone's distress call hit the air, Gravely was already turning toward the sound. On the Venezuelan bridge, confusion spread faster than fire. "Where did those missiles come from?" one officer shouted. No one answered. Their radar had seen nothing until the sky itself exploded. The sea burned, the decks tilted, and commands dissolved into static. What began as a show of force ended as a scramble for survival. Back aboard USCGC Stone, sailors worked through smoke and exhaustion. One medic tied a tourniquet on a man's arm, his own uniform soaked in seawater. The captain watched the burning horizon, saying nothing. He knew this was more than luck. It was proof that the Coast Guard never truly sails alone. On the surviving Venezuelan ship, silence fell. The captain stared at the sinking shadows of his sister ships. He dropped his cap, turned to his crew, and gave the only order left: cut engines, raise the flag. For the first time that day, no one argued. As Gravely closed the distance, rescue boats deployed not to chase, but to save. It was a rule older than politics. Sailors, rescue sailors, even enemies. For the Venezuelans floating in oil-streaked water, that mercy was the only thing stronger than the explosion that took their ships. What none of them knew was that this single clash would rewrite future missions in the region. From that moment on, no Coast Guard cutter would ever patrol without an armed shadow just beyond the horizon. 2:39 p.m. The sea was a battlefield turned graveyard. The Venezuelan flagship was gone. Another ship lay capsized, and the third floated dead in the water. Smoke drifted across the horizon, mixing with the smell of burning fuel and salt. On board USCGC Stone, the crew moved through chaos with quiet precision. Fire hoses hissed, pumps groaned, and medics treated 7 wounded sailors right on deck. "Keep pressure on that wound," one yelled. The ship's interior was blackened, but her engines still turned. "We've got power," the chief engineer confirmed. The captain's reply came firm and simple: "Then we live." 2:43 p.m. The radio came alive again, short, clipped words. Gravely, 5 minutes out. Those few words changed everything. The destroyer had arrived. When USS Gravely appeared on the horizon, her presence felt like a wall of steel. She slowed near the smoking cutter, her deck crew already deploying small boats. No music, no celebration, just professionalism. All ships, cease fire. Begin rescue operations. The Venezuelan surrendering vessel lowered its guns completely. White flag fluttering, it drifted silently among wreckage and bodies. Gravely sailors launched their RHIBs, moving first toward survivors from the sunken ships. Oil stained their uniforms as they hauled men aboard, some burned, some crying, some too shocked to speak. It didn't matter. At sea, enemies become victims when the guns stop. By 2:51 p.m., the fighting was officially over. From the first warning shot to complete silence, 18 minutes. The logbooks would record it in dry numbers. 2 enemy ships destroyed, 1 captured, 7 Americans wounded, 33 Venezuelans dead, 89 rescued. But the reality was anything but dry. Every man on Stone had seen how fast peace could vanish and how fast it could return. The destroyer and cutter formed up side by side, heading north toward San Juan, Puerto Rico. The sun began to fall behind them, turning the water gold. For the sailors on deck, that glow wasn't victory, it was relief. They'd lived through the impossible. If you think discipline and training made the difference that day, press 1. If you believe survival itself was the greatest victory, press 9 and subscribe so you don't miss how this battle reshaped the entire Caribbean Command. 18 minutes. That's all it took to change everything. 2 warships sunk, 1 surrendered, and a Coast Guard cutter that refused to die. When USCGC Stone limped into San Juan under escort, crowds gathered at the pier. The ship was scarred, her hull blackened, but she was still floating. The 7 wounded sailors were rushed to the naval hospital. All survived. Within weeks, repairs were complete. New radar systems, stronger armor plates, and upgraded comms were installed. The cutter returned to duty before summer ended. For the Venezuelan Navy, the story ended very differently. The surviving patrol ship crept back to port, her crew silent, faces pale. Commanders blamed subordinates, courts-martial followed, and officers were imprisoned. But everyone knew the truth: the regime had ordered the strike, and it had cost them 2 ships, 33 lives, and their reputation. At 4th Fleet Command, the lesson was written into policy. No Coast Guard vessel would ever operate near hostile waters alone again. Every patrol from that day forward would include a destroyer or frigate within missile range. It wasn't just a safety rule, it was deterrence in motion. Around the world, other nations watched closely. They saw how 4 Harpoon missiles costing less than $5 million had erased $130 million worth of steel and bravado. They learned that modern naval power isn't about the size of ships, but the speed of response and the precision of the first strike. Today, the wrecks of Guamachuto and Yaguaraparo rest on the seafloor, 67 miles north of La Guaira. Coral is already growing across their broken hulls. Fish shelter where sailors once stood. They've become artificial reefs and quiet monuments to a fatal mistake. The ocean remembers. The survivors remember. And every ship that now sails those waters remembers one thing: the Coast Guard never sails alone.